Why Frank Sinatra?
Because he is the best. Quincy Jones said he was a monster musician, and I've always aspired to that in particular. The nerves mean that you care about what you're doing, They are a fuel, because if you weren't nervous, you just sauntered out onto the stage and you're like, how are you doing? Let's do a few tunes. What's the point? I saw a tweet from a lovely, incredible jazz singer called Claire Martin, and I sent her a message. Claire came on as a producer. She's an amazing name. She's got an MBE for services to jazz, etc. There was a lovely drummer called Matt Skelton who was with the BBC Big Band who played on it. So it's really good. It's a really high quality thing. I'm trying to get a show that I've written, produced. If anyone out there wants to produce a show about Elvis and Frank Sinatra, get in touch.
Today I'm thrilled to welcome a true talent in the world of jazz. Chris Weeks is a UK-based singer, actor and producer whose smooth baritone voice has captivated audiences across the country. He's also an accomplished actor, having portrayed Buddy Holly on stage. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello.
First of all, I wanted to dive in a little bit to your earlier days in your life. How you sort of came to the decision of, following music as a career. How did you fall in love with it? And what was your perhaps earliest memory where you thought to yourself, this is something that I want to do?
It is a lifelong thing, definitely. My father, both my parents actually were very musical. They both play and sing guitar. My mum doesn't really play anymore, but she sings in a choir. My dad still plays in like a rock pop function band.
Even today?
To this day,
wow.
He still does. So I always had it around, and it was always just sort of part of the furniture. And Dad would go out at weekends and be gigging and playing at some functions and parties and weddings and that sort of thing, And so it was attainable up to a certain point, maybe not like professional, because my dad was a teacher in the week and he did that at the weekends. But I always remember, and this will give away my age, that Robbie Williams was sort of at his first height, in the 90s, and Angels came out in 1997. And I listened to it, and I was like, I think I could do that. And that is that is a thought that I had in my head, which is ridiculous because I was 7 years old, and obviously I couldn't sing Angels. I can barely sing it now. But it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, I like that, and I think I could do that. And from there, I went on to do Amdram, like so many young actors and singers do, and I played Oliver in Oliver by Lionel Bart. The adaptation of Oliver Twist. And so I did that when I was 10, did more shows like that. And then it was when I got to about 16, 17, and I was at school, and I went to a performing arts college, not sort of by design, but they actually became a performing arts college while I was there, but it was fantastic, and they built this amazing theatre. And I said to my mum, I'll be the first one on that stage. And I was, which was lovely. We did a production of Annie Get Your Gun, and I played Frank Butler. And I was treated in a way by the director that was like, he took me very, very seriously.
Okay.
Or they both did, the musical director and the director. And it was just sort of bubbling away in the background that maybe this was something that, I took it very seriously, far too seriously for a 16-year-old. And I was being taken seriously, and I really liked that. And so, it was just sort of becoming the special thing that I did that a lot of people didn't do or didn't take as seriously as me.
I assume a lot of your schoolmates at the time as well probably didn't think about following a performing arts career. And so at that point, you were quite unique in that sense.
Yeah, I think so. But in my mind, I sort of already was, like I played Javert in a production of Les Mis, like a youth production, But I read Les Miserables by Victor Hugo from front to back, and I studied it and listened to every cast recording and learnt all of the phrasing. And, I took it incredibly seriously. So I think I was sort of approaching it in a very professional way from that sort of point. And at the same time, I had started playing in Dad's function band, which he's still doing to this day.
Right, so you started performing with your father as well.
I did.
This was at what age?
I think I started with them on and off about 14.
Yeah.
And we were doing paid
Same
gigs.
age as me, by the way.
Is that right?
I can tell you a little bit about it, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Please go ahead.
But yeah, that's it. But when you start being paid for it, And it was a good amount of money for what essentially is...
For a 14-year-old, right?
For a 14-year-old, it's an amazing amount of money. I went from like paper round to suddenly playing bass on a gig and getting however much money, 150, 200 quid, you know, I mean, it's really good. But also like the pressure is more because you're like, I'm being paid for it now. You know, it's
there's
the
a
same.
certain level of professionalism that you need to. And
Even at 14, I was like, I need to know the songs. I need to know how to be in a gig situation, and I didn't, but I followed what my dad did, and I just needed to know what I was doing, and that sort of sharpened me up. Because of course, like if I'm my father's son, he's in the band, like that's the reason that I'm there. I could also deliver. I mean, I think I was all right. I was very good for a kid of 14, definitely, playing bass for them, and. But yeah, they're like, why would they hire me again if I wasn't actually good at it, you know, like good enough at it?
Yeah.
And then that became more regular, and I eventually like started doing it a lot more regularly for them.
That's fantastic. 7 years old, you had the sort of first little itch that,
Isn't that ridiculous?
yeah, this is maybe what I enjoy doing. And then it sort of turned somewhat into a career at 14, really. And then at 16, you decided to take it seriously.
Yeah.
You know, interestingly, so I started playing the guitar when I was 11 years old. And this is what got me into music. And this is why I eventually went into electronic music, because that's kind of what I ended up liking at that time. But I remember watching School of Rock, the movie, on a airplane from Greece back to England. I'm originally from Greece, so we're flying back from holiday. And literally, I fell in love with the idea of being in a band.
Yeah.
And I said, that's what I want to do. And the very first thing I did when I went back to school, I wanted to start guitar lessons. And I kept asking my mother, she was really busy, to write me a letter because she needed to do that for me to submit it to my teacher. She wasn't doing it. She kept forgetting. So I forged a letter from her.
Brilliant.
Tried to copy her signature, started guitar lessons, and then she got a check through the post. About 3-4 months later, it was charged every quarter.
Right.
To her surprise, I was playing guitar this whole time.
I mean, that's amazing. That is amazing. Wow. So, you see, I had my dad literally in the next room, which was very useful for learning guitar. When I eventually went to him and was like, come on, I should probably learn.
That's lovely. So moving on, what was your first experience as a singer? You mentioned you were playing bass in your dad's band, but of course you had also performed in the Oliver Twist adaptation. I'm not sure, that was probably musical theatre, I assume.
It is a musical show.
No, in Oliver, so I guess you were already a singer or singing on stage in some way, but what did that transition into jazz look like?
Oh, well, I mean...
Or was that much later on?
No, that was around this sort of time. So I started with Oliver. I didn't really know what I was doing, but, you know, I had a good, natural ear and natural, sense of rhythm and whatever. So, and I would phrase it nicely enough for a child of 8, you know. Oliver is a sweet, kind part. It's quite simple, really, like it should be. You know, he's an 8-year-old boy, and he should be played by a child at that age, so it can't be too tricky. So I was able to do that, but I was just singing. I wasn't a singer; I was just singing, you know, because that's what I needed to do. When I started singing with Dad's band, normally backing vocals, which was good. And I haven't mentioned, but I was playing a few instruments by this point. So I said I was playing bass. I could also play guitar, but I started learning trumpet when I was about 8 or maybe slightly younger. Essentially when my teeth were strong enough to, because, you know, it's a metal mouthpiece, you have to jam it against your mouth. So they have to be strong enough to take that. And I'd done grades in that, so I could read music. I had a good natural ear for harmony and things like that. And a reasonable technical knowledge to back it up. So when I was 16, I was with Dad's band doing the BVs, and the musical director of the show that I was doing, Annie Get Your Gun, was a big jazz guy, really, really big. And I knew some of the songs. I certainly knew Sinatra, and I knew Dean Martin, and I knew the Rat Pack. So, you know, not necessarily the jazz side of jazz, but certainly the swinging side. From my grandmother, of course, she adored Frank Sinatra. And this guy, the musical director, who we became very, very good friends, a chap called Patrick Gazzard, he was like, you should go and try and sing with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. And I I think I had started maybe doing a couple of bits in that sort of Sinatra Bublé-ish style, which you, poor unsuspecting man, came across at Hampton Court. And so I've been doing a few of those gigs, so I was very aware of it. I was like, I've got an understanding of it. I know the words, I know the tunes, etc. I've got a good feel for it. And he said, you should go and try and do this. So I went up to Marylebone to the Cockpit Theatre, which is where I think they still rehearse. And I did a few sessions with them, which was great. Unbelievable, talented band. You walk into the room and all of a sudden you've got this incredible professional quality big band of God knows how many players, because it's a youth band, it's not like these days you can't hire a big band because there's so many players, it costs too much. But they were paying to be there and they were phenomenal, so it was an amazing thing. So I started doing that. And the only reason I left that was because I started gigging more. So instead of paying to go and do it, I was sort of being paid to do it myself, But yeah, that was when I really started to, it was around the same sort of time. It all happened around 16, 17-ish.
I think it's quite interesting that you generally have been surrounded by music throughout your whole life. So obviously your father, you mentioned your grandmother was really into Frank Sinatra, and that probably influenced you a little bit as well to some extent. And on that, I also wanted to ask you if you remember the very first performance in front of a decent enough crowd that you thought, oh wow, this is something special, and whether you felt nervous or excited or both. Can you recall yourself in that moment and the feelings that maybe came across you that perhaps pushed you to pursue this? It's
a great question. I must have been nervous. Even doing Oliver, I must have been nervous. Kids don't get nervous in the same way. But I mean, I get nervous all the time to this day, and it's got worse with age, probably. What was a big show that I did? I'll tell you what, I did do, there was one there which had a lot riding on it. So when I was 17, still at that same performing arts school, and I wanted to put on a Rat Pack show with two other pals of mine, or one chap who I was doing a lot with, and we thought we need a third. And so we drafted in someone we'd met doing another show and put together a band. The pianist on it was the musical director who I'd worked with, who had sent me off to Niger in the first place, who we become, we'd done a few gigs actually, which is unusual, between students and teachers, but we had that sort of relationship. And
this was at what age?
This was at 17. And so I put on a show, and so I was very invested in it because, I was the one who had done all of it. I did the poster, I got the venue and all the rest of it, and cajoled people into playing for it. And I think I must have paid them. I assume I must have paid. I must have
Did you get funding from somewhere?
No. It was all ticketed.
Your own pocket?
Oh, I mean, what would I have done? I think I must have got because we used the school theatre, so it was just as a favour. I absolutely was hiring the musicians, so if we hadn't sold the tickets, it would have been me that paid them, and I would have paid them, so because as I said, I was taking myself seriously, I was taking myself as a professional at that point, and that show was a big thing, so, but it was one of those things, and I often find this, if you're super, super busy, and you have a lot to do, as I did. I did everything for that show pretty much. Organising rehearsals for the band, bringing everyone in, doing the set list, negotiating with the sound and light and all that, and organising the bar and dropping it all back to Waitrose and all that sort of nonsense, I was sort of falling over myself. And so by the time it actually got to be on stage, it was like, it's a blessed relief, because and I've often found this is all I have to do. I'm not being pulled in lots of different directions. It's me, a microphone, an audience. And if I am pulled in another direction, then I've failed, because, my focus has to be here. And that's one of the things I've always loved about live performance. So I would have been very, very nervous, but probably in the week before at 11:30 at night when I should have been asleep. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if it's going to work.
And when you get on stage,
yeah,
does that nervousness, that fear sort of dissipate?
It does.
Maybe excitement.
Yeah. I mean, nerves are excitement.
Takes over. Yeah.
At the end of the day,
course,
I think, especially for a performer, because I recognize the more and more I've done, I recognize when I am nervous, and it doesn't necessarily feel like nervousness rather. I always feel I always feel tired, or in the 15 minutes before a show, I'm always like, oh, cracky, I'm not sure if I could do it. And it's because my body is, I think, gearing up for a higher level of energy, and it recognizes the channels that we're going down. And I always start yawning and things like that. And I'm trying to get more oxygen literally into my brain, and so I feel tired. That's the response. But I recognize it now, and I can turn it into adrenaline or turn it into excitement or anything like that.
A quick follow-up for anyone who is listening to this and is interested in sort of having a career in performing arts or being a singer, but they do get nervous and it is difficult for them to overcome. What's maybe one tip or technique or some piece of advice that you could offer to help them kind of get over that, or at least be able to push through it on the night?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few things which I've recognized that I've either done or I've adopted over the years. When you feel confident, your breath slows, your tempo slows, your breath generally comes a little bit lower. You can sort of breathe from here into your chest, or you can breathe into your stomach.
That sounds almost meditative.
It absolutely is. 100% it is. And there is a direct correlation physically and mentally, but like when you're feeling nervous as opposed to when you're feeling confident. And you can induce a fake state of confidence by essentially faking the physical side of it. So if you, as I've done just now, slow your tempo down, artificially slow it down. When you breathe deeply as well, you lower your center of gravity, and you become a much stronger, stable sort of thing. So for me, it really is. It's sort of faking it, and I think you just get to the point where you fake it so well that you fool yourself as well. You never lose the nerves. The nerves are great. The nerves mean that you care about what you're doing, and they are a fuel. Because if you weren't nervous and you just sauntered out onto the stage and you're like, well, how are you doing? Let's do a few tunes. What's the point? The audience at the end of the day have paid money to see you. That's what I've done long tours before where I've, doing a matinee in Skegness on Thursday, and you're at the bottom of a pit and you're like, oh my God, I've got to go and do 2.5 hours or something. But at the end of the day, they paid 30 quid or something to sit in that seat. And so you have to find it, or you have to fake it.
Yeah. Maybe you've heard of Andrew Huberman. Perhaps not. He's actually one of the biggest podcasters in the world. Right. I think around 5 million subscribers. He's also a doctor. And he recently said that there have been some scientific studies that prove that breathing slowly actually reduces nervousness and can reduce stress as well. And taking a deep breath in, there's a couple of different techniques that he recommends, but it sounds as though you sort of figured that out on your own.
Who'd have thought?
And you use this technique in order to instill that, even if it's a false sense of confidence, but fake it till you make it. Maybe once you fake it a little bit, you put your body into a kind of more calm state. That then allows you to actually be more calm.
Absolutely. I always think your body really knows what to do. It's your brain that gets in the way, But as soon as you start sending the impulses of that deeper breathing, your brain is like, oh, this is nice, And so that does start to quiet it. It's a funny thing, but it's like one influences the other. So why can it not influence it the other way? You know what I mean?
So you've performed with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra.
Yes.
Oxford University Jazz Orchestra.
Oh, yes.
And even the Pizza Express Jazz Club in Soho.
I did. Long time ago, but yes.
Yeah. Do you have any stories or standout memories from any of those performances / collaborations?
Oh, that is a tricky one. Most of it is just being so impressed by the people around me, because we were, those are the people who took it really seriously. And they would go on to music college, or they would go on to, they were already at Oxford University. Some of them were doing music, some of them were doing maths or whatever else, other things that sort of lead to jazz. But we had some great times, and we did some lovely, lovely gigs. To be honest, that was all wrapped up in a very busy time of my life. when I was 24, I went to the Oxford School of Drama, which is an acting school, and I did 3 years there, and that is how I joined the Oxford University Jazz Orchestra.
I see.
So I was doing that during the day, and then I was going to either rehearse or to go and do gigs with Aljo, they're called, great name, at in the night and at the weekends, as well as like teaching and doing all this stuff to sort of fund my way through drama school. So it was a real time of definitely of self-discovery, and you always question like. It's the imposter syndrome thing, isn't it? It's you always assume that you're going to get found out at some level. So like I sang with the county big band, lovely. I then went off to Nijo and did some time with them, great. And then I all the time was doing professional gigs in that I was being paid for them, and I was doing weddings and I was doing birthdays and restaurants and hotels and all the stuff that you do, to sort of earn a crust. It's like every time you're taking this step up and you're like, when is the last step? So I was at drama school, which is always a very challenging time anyway, training to be an actor. And their thing is like, they tear you apart, they tear apart your sense
I've heard,
of self.
yeah.
It's a tough thing. Like it's really, really good. What helped me survive was that I was doing so much outside it. So when I was teaching, I was in a situation where I had to deliver. Because if I had gone in there as a timid 24-year-old, 25-year-old, the kids would have been like, oh, they'd been all over me, so I had to sort of deliver, and that was nice. I was in control. But yes, I was then going to Aljo, and I auditioned for them, as you do, and I was like, is this the moment that I get found out, and it didn't, and I didn't, and it sort of kept on going. I solved a problem for them, which was that they needed a male singer who knew the rep and could talk to a crowd and all of this. And up to that point, I had got the experience, I had the know-how, and so it sort of worked out, and we had lovely time.
Now you've also been in some major productions as an actor. I think most notably Buddy Holly in Buddy, correct?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that. And also, beyond that, do you feel like you've now deviated away from acting and focusing primarily on music, or is acting still close to your heart and it's something you want to continue doing more of?
Acting, I think for me, at the moment is on pause.
Yeah.
Because I have a young family. I've got 2 little boys. And acting generally needs you to be away. Unless you're in the West End, which is lovely, but I've never had that chance really. But so most of the stuff that I've done has been touring, doing 8 shows a week, going around the UK, staying away for the week, seeing them for a couple of days a week. And initially I was doing that before I had my first son. And then I was finishing a contract, and it was a nice way of making money and all the rest of it. But and music was definitely on the back burner then. But it's also a sense of control, I think, for me. It's being in control of your own career. And when you join a big company, you are that company's property, not literally, obviously, but you are yourself within it.
You are an employee, even if it's for an acting job, you're still an employee. Yeah.
So. And I have actively tried to move away from not employing myself, as it were.
Yeah.
But I went back to it. Like I was doing Buddy. I first got that part in 2019, and we were doing the tour then until COVID struck. And of course, all the theatres closed, and it was a dreadful business. And I went back to it. I didn't think I would go back to it. I thought, because I did 8 months or something, and that's quite a long time. And it's a very intense show. Physically, it's incredibly demanding.
8 months on the road of doing this show. Wow. That's a lot.
Oh, yeah. I've done longer than that.
And was it then that you also had your first son?
No, I already had him at that point.
You already had him, okay.
Yeah, I had him when he was born in October, and I got that job the following August.
All right.
And I wasn't planning on touring again. That's the thing. It was only that I got that role, and it was a show that my dad adored and that we went to see when it was touring in the 90s when I was...
It's a big role, to be fair.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I guess it's difficult for anybody to turn something like that down, right?
It is. And it had sort of always been on my... I never really dreamed that I would do that part because... what are the odds? It doesn't go... it tours once every couple of years. Obviously, it's it's one role in one show. So what are the odds that I'm going to get it? You know, but as an actor who sang and played guitar, it was like, oh, like if I'm any good, I'll get this, but I should aim for this. But I could conceivably, I was qualified to do the role, and unbelievably, the stars aligned, and I was able to do it. You know,
that's amazing.
But it was great. I like it, and I went back to it in 2022 or three. 2023 it must have been. And no, yes, it was 2023. Sorry, I've got no concept
No
of time.
worries.
And it was great, and it was lovely, and it was fab to come back. And I changed an awful lot over COVID because I'd been taking control of a lot of my work. I started doing session work remotely. I was doing lots more singing. I was much more confident in my abilities as a singer, and so I came back to it from a real position of strength, which was lovely. And
you felt more confident. So you, even though at that point you're technically still employed by a production company, perhaps you feel a little bit more power within yourself.
Yeah.
And like you have a little bit more control of yourself as an artist, as an actor.
Absolutely, as an artist. Yeah, 100%. I had done an awful lot of, this is another sort of, page in my portfolio is that I do an awful lot of session singing. So that, you know, remote, or I do it remotely. I did because I did it mainly over COVID, and I've done it in studio since, but I still mainly do remote. So recording from home, doing demos, doing commercials, doing original songs, generally in the jazz style. And so I'd really refined my own taste in what I did, because I did an awful lot of listening to comps, you know, of tracks and putting it together and being like, I like this phrasing, I like this. And I'd done
So you would do multiple takes, then you would comp the best ones together.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you would do this all on your own or with a producer?
No, I do it on my own.
Wow.
I do it on my own. And I was doing production jobs as well. I didn't do them quite as much because in terms of an hourly rate, just being a singer was better because I could, you know, knock out a lot of songs and it would be great. And it's a much simpler thing to do. But as in terms of my approach artistically, I was really, really listening to my own voice. And it was essentially, I was in like this pressure cooker because I did, when I started doing it in 2017, I just did a few. But when I really started to do it a lot and become, you know, it was the main income for the household essentially. So I was like, well, I need to get this right. And I also need to be satisfied with what I'm hearing. It was a whole new world for me. It was a real pressure.
So what would you say for you? So of course you've had a lot of success as an actor and as a singer, as a jazz singer, most notably. However, unless you are at the top 0.1% and the global superstar, essentially, what would you say mostly pays the bills? Because this is something that I think a lot of musicians, specifically musicians, struggle with. Because as an actor, if you perform in a fairly well-known play, or even if you're in a relatively not well-known but still TV show, you'll get the bills paid. But 100%. As a musician, however, it's not always the same. So what would you say pays the bills, if you don't mind me asking you this?
Not at all. No, honestly, it's one of the things that I'm sort of most proud of is that I draw it from all sorts of different parts, all sorts of different parts. The majority is still live. Like the majority of my income is live. Theatre work, concert work, gigs, all that sort of thing. I also teach. I'm trying to teach more to my skill set, which is band leading, working in jazz, working in standards, interpreting songs. So like the higher end of it, if I possibly can, and also session singing. And that's pretty much it. I've got a few other things as well, which I've got royalties and things, which is passive income, which is lovely. That's great. That keeps on coming in. It's not a huge amount. That's one of my projects for the next few years is to really build that. That's my pension, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's the pension for the self-employed.
Yeah, it really is. You've got to make it for yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's drawing from those different parts.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's great, and I love it. And
I appreciate you being so candid about this as well, so open, because a lot of people hide the reality of, you know, making money in the music business. I've got some friends who still, unfortunately, even though they actually have hundreds of thousands of followers and perform in some of the biggest events, they still don't make enough.
Yeah.
to sustain themselves and their families unless they work a side job. But as a musician, side jobs doesn't necessarily have to mean you have a normal, 9-to-5 office job.
Yeah.
It could still be related to your skill set as a musician.
Absolutely. And I find that each one can enhance the others. As I said, all my work in session singing has made me a much better live performer.
Of course.
Much, much, much better. And again, as they say, the best way to learn is to teach. All the teaching, it's made me so much more confident, and it's just solidified my thinking about all sorts of different things.
Now, to be frank,
Ah,
you released an album, essentially, an EP, and it was a tribute to Frank Sinatra, as far as I'm aware,
it was.
titled To Be Frank. I'd love to know the inspiration behind this, why specifically you chose Frank Sinatra, and what your plans are moving forward with more music releases, perhaps.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it had always been on my radar that I wasn't legit because I didn't have anything on Spotify or out there in the world. You wouldn't know who I was if you sort of searched that way. You'd see function singer or teacher or whatever, but you wouldn't see recording artist or session singer, but you wouldn't see recording artist. So I was always like, I must do this. And I saw a tweet from a lovely, incredible jazz singer called Claire Martin, who was running a production company at the time and was saying, I'm looking for new people. I want to work with, new talent and see what we can find. And I sent her a message, not really expecting to hear back, saying, I've always wanted to do this, etc., etc. And she was like, great, yes, we must do it. And then I think I went off and did Buddy. So I was like, okay, we'll just hold off and we'll come back to it. And it was then sort of bubbling away in the background. And it's not a cheap thing to do, to hire a studio, because I did have to fund it, of course, because there was a little bit of funding in place. I think, it's a few years ago now, but it was basically self-funded. But for me, I was like, this is a loss leader. It's absolutely worth doing. It's something I can point to. It's something out there that will be high quality, has great names attached to it, because Claire came on as a producer. She's an amazing name. She's got an MBE for services to jazz, etc. There was a lovely drummer called Matt Skelton who was with the BBC Big Band who played on it. So it's really good. Like, it's a really high quality thing. And so, I finally found the time to do it. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to piece the two things together, because I think I did a Hampton Court gig maybe the day after recording it. So I'm piecing together, how we met.
I see.
And because that's how life works, it's like...
Yeah, so actually, for those who don't know, this Christmas, the one that just went by, I was in Hampton Court with my wife on a day out Christmas fair, and lo and behold, you were performing.
I was.
And normally, no disrespect to anyone who performs in fairs, but I don't think much of a performer in a fair, because sometimes you think, it's just maybe a local musician who they've hired just, for the atmosphere. But we stopped and listened to you sing, and it was absolutely incredible. I mean, the quality of your voice, the timbre, the control, the way that you interacted with the crowd, even some of the kids that were there, it exuded professionalism completely. And so I had to go and find out who you were. I looked at the lineup. I then looked you up online and found out that you were a renowned jazz singer. And then I thought to myself, in reality, Hampton Court, probably one of the most prestigious Christmas fairs in all of London. It's also not free to enter. And a lot of people go there. So it actually made sense that you would be performing somewhere like that over Christmas. But at the time, I just hadn't pieced the two together. And it was a shock, but in a really good way. Thank you for your performance on that day.
No, my God. Thank you for having me on based on singing Christmas songs. Unbelievable. But yeah, it was a lovely time. But so I've been doing that for a little while. I've been doing all of those.
So, sorry, and it was also about the album To Be Frank, and then how you performed in.
That's it. And so it was because I was desperately trying to find time, 2 days. That's all I needed. 2 days to go into a studio down near Dover, I think it was, to record this EP. It wasn't that many songs, but you know how it is. It's trying to find 2 days back to back where I can say yes. And I was still doing Buddy at the time, so I did that in the week. and I think we must have had a week off or something. I went down to do it in Sunday and Monday or something, and then went and did Hampton Court after that, and then went back to Buddy, and it's just madness, honestly. But
so
yes,
the purpose behind the album, was it for you to be able to promote yourself more as a recording artist? So now you've had this studio professionally produced album that's out and about, and therefore you can start to push your career as a performing artist, as a recording artist rather, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, at the time, I thought that I might be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I was being ultra realistic, and I was just thinking that, for my session work as much as anything else, if someone looks me up and they find that, they're more likely to hire me. Like that was the
right.
base level of what it could achieve. Anything after that was a bonus, and obviously it's done really well. Like it's done much better than I ever anticipated it doing, and it's made its money back, and all the rest of it. It's amazing, unheard of.
And why Frank Sinatra?
Because he is the best. He is the pinnacle. He is, Quincy Jones said he was a monster musician, and I've always aspired to that in particular. I am a singer, and I am all of the things that come with that, and a few bonus ones as well. But I am a singer first and foremost, and Frank Sinatra was just like that. He was a singer, but everything else was, absolutely crystal. It was grade A. His ears, his timing, his phrasing, his relationships, his way that he worked with the crowd and with bands. And he's always been in my life from 12 or 13, because my grandmother introduced me to him.
That's right.
And I was listening to him, and I was learning, and I was, he was always the pinnacle for me. So I thought, right, it's got to be.
When we think of jazz, we think of names like Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, of course, Nat Cole, Frank Sinatra. What comes to you when you hear those names? How do you feel when you hear those names, and what sort of inspiration do you draw from each one of those?
The thing that I love about all of those people is their individuality. There's no one like them, Their sound, their tone, their taste, they were 100% themselves, which has always been super important to me. And when I started out, I was listening to Michael Bublé, and so I would go and do songs in the manner of Michael Bublé, or I'd even learn his phrasing and things like that. And over time, you learn to sort of refine your own taste in what you're doing, as I said, which I've done a lot through session singing. And so it really is that, more than any other genre, I think, they could take someone else's song and it would be completely different in their hands, Like a Nat Cole. Who's got a voice like Nat King Cole? No one. He's phenomenal. Ella Fitzgerald, her virtuosity, her technical ability, and also her great heart and emotional connection. Louis Armstrong, obviously the originator of the whole damn thing, just like no one else. Yeah, it's that.
There's a couple more questions I want to ask you, and they're somewhat rapid fire in the sense that I'd like to get your immediate opinion that comes to mind. So first of all, Ronnie Scott's. How do you feel when you think about Ronnie Scott's? What do you think about Ronnie Scott's as a jazz club, as one of London's most supposedly prestigious jazz clubs?
What do I think? I think I want to play there.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I was thinking you might say that.
It's on my goals list. I've got my in my notes, life goals, Ronnie Scott's. There it is.
I will be the first one to book a ticket,
mate,
when you're placed there. I would love to see you perform.
Hopefully it won't be too
actually.
long.
I hope so as well. Yeah, Ronnie Scott's, you should have him on. Trust me. The next one is jazz or rock? Let me rephrase it. Sorry, jazz or rock and roll?
Oh, well. These are the two halves of my coin. It's very difficult to separate them. As I get older, jazz.
Yeah,
I'm too old for rock and roll.
It's the smoothness.
It's the smoothness.
Yeah,
it's the smoothness. It ages like fine wine.
Talk to me, if you've got a little bit more time, about your band. because you also perform with a band, if I'm not mistaken.
I perform with many bands. Which one are you talking about?
There is specifically one that you list on your website.
Is it the Blue Jays?
That's correct.
Okay. So the Blue Jays are a rock and roll band. So strike that I ever said I was too old for rock and roll from the record because they will fire me. Yes, the Blue Jays are a pretty prestigious rock and roll band.
Yep.
They're, you could make an argument they're sort of the number one band in the country for rock and roll, which I frequently do, of course. And yeah, I joined them a week after finishing Buddy because their old frontman had to leave in a hurry.
I see.
And they reached out to me and said, do you fancy it? I finished Buddy on the Saturday in Crawley. I then had a week to learn the new show. Obviously, I knew a lot of the
I love
songs.
how you're very precise with the dates as well.
Oh,
because
yeah.
these must have been quite important periods of your life, or quite impactful things that happened in your life. So you really remember exactly the timeline of them.
For those sorts of things, I've got very specific dates. For example, I married my wife on August the 5th. I got Buddy, that was a Monday. I got food poisoning for 2 days.
Oh,
very
gosh.
unlucky, very unlucky. But then on the Thursday, so 3 days later, I got the offer for Buddy. So that week, just a bizarre week.
Yeah.
So I can't forget that. But
highs and lows, but the highs are...
It was like coming out the other side of it with a call from my agent being like, I feel like I must still be ill and hallucinating because this can't be right, Amazing, but what a week. But yes, no, it was Crawley and I finished on the Saturday and my son came to see my last show. So amazing, wonderful.
Yeah.
And yes, then I had a week to learn the new one and started the following Saturday.
And just a slight follow-up, do you see yourself pursuing more of a solo career moving forward? Do you have big plans for your solo career? And we'll get to that in a second. But also, what are you doing with the Blue Jays?
The Blue Jays, we do a show, it's like my bread and butter at the moment, really.
Okay.
We do a regular show which is called Rave On, The Rise of Rock and Roll, which is a lovely show.
Is it toured?
Yes.
Or is it... Okay, so you're touring the show.
I am, but I'm not touring in the same way that I was with Buddy.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful sort of balance because we still play a lot of the same theatres. So I'm really scratching an itch, being in front of a crowd, and in a way that Buddy didn't offer. I am myself in this show. I'm not playing a character.
Yeah.
I'm an elevated version of myself because I'm on a stage and, I'm bigger energy and all the rest of it and making silly gags and things that I don't do in day-to-day life. But it's still very much me. And so, yeah, we're touring around the UK and we do, I couldn't even tell you how many dates, 80, 100 dates a year in theatres. So
that's roughly 2 per week, a little bit under 2 a week.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Are there periods where you do more in a month and less? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So that means you don't have to be on the road for 8 months at a time.
Exactly.
You can do maybe a month or two and then come back home.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Or it's more sporadic even than that. We
Great.
sort of do, last year the most we ever did, I think, was 5 in a row. And then we had a couple of weeks off. And then
that helps you balance family life as well.
Absolutely. And I love that so much. It's fantastic. But yeah, the show is a 6-piece band and 2 techs. And it's just great. It's my favorite music.
Where can we see you perform with the Blue Jays coming up?
You can find all of that information at raveontour.com.
Raveontour.com.
That's it. They'll be delighted.
We'll overlay it on the video as well and make sure we've got a link in the description below.
Yeah. We're all over the UK.
In terms of other things going on in your life professionally, what can we look forward to from you in 2025 and beyond?
Wow, I've got a lot of... I'm quite a goal-orientated sort of person, and my goals list, as I said on my phone, is long, too long, unachievable, but I'm doing my best. So this year, I'm trying to get a show that I've written, produced. If anyone out there wants to produce a show about Elvis and Frank Sinatra, get in touch. I think it's really good.
Can I just pause there? That sounds fascinating.
I'll send it to you.
That's not something I found online when researching you, to be honest.
You wouldn't. No, very briefly. The premise is, so Elvis and Sinatra performed together once in their lives. That was it. It was in 1960. Before that performance, they were mortal enemies, publicly. And after that performance, they were the best of friends. So the show is about the...
That's something I didn't know about Elvis or Frank Sinatra, actually.
Yeah, it was a real thing. And it's about the turning of who's at the top of the tree. Because Elvis came along at 25 and Frank, who was 45, was like, who is this upstart? But they became incredible friends.
I actually find this in day-to-day life as well. I play a lot of chess.
Oh, yeah.
So this is obviously somewhat unrelated, but when I play against someone online that I don't know, I feel differently towards them than when I'm playing against someone in front of me that I do know. So if I played a chess game against you and you won 10 out of 10 times, I wouldn't feel any animosity towards you whatsoever. I'd actually be really happy for you. This is the difference. So I don't really tend to feel animosity either way, but I would genuinely be happy to be like, wow, Chris, like, that's awesome. Well done, mate.
I'd
That's
be surprised,
epic.
I have to say.
When I'm playing online, however, I do get a bit annoyed at myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
If I lose. Yeah. So I think perhaps it's a similar thing where when they meet and actually perform together, they now have some sort of brotherhood.
That's it.
That they wouldn't have had before. And so envy turns to happiness or being proud or, you know, supportive of one another.
That's it. I mean, that's what happens in the play, you know. Yeah. But they haven't really met until that point. And the only thing has been this build-up in the press. Yeah. And then eventually they meet. Of course, there's a blow-up. And then Sinatra shows his more emotional side and sort of he becomes a father figure to Elvis, really, which is sort of what happened.
I would love to see this play get produced.
So would I.
I really would. So if anyone out there is listening, there's quite a few people in the performing arts industry that listen to this podcast. So please reach out.
That's on the list.
And other than that, what else is coming up for you this year?
So lots of writing. Lots of writing. I'm doing more music. I'm doing original music, and I'm
also
doing
music writing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, it's a few things. It's a few things. I'm still working on scripts, but music will be definitely coming out this year, which will be good. It's about time, really. It's about time that I sort of did another. So I want to make that a big part of the year. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm very close to launching something which is like a coaching service for singers and musicians, but mainly singers who were like me 10 years ago and who hadn't sort of diversified into different income streams and things like that, which I'm calling the Singer Survives.
That's great. So is that going to be some sort of online platform, or is it?
It's going to be, led by YouTube and
fantastic,
and one-on-one coaching, and eventually, hopefully, some sort of courses and things like that.
This sounds great because this will be able to help a lot of aspiring musicians actually make a living out of doing what they love, even if they're not worldwide famous.
Absolutely, that's it. I mean, no one, why would anyone know who I am? But I have a lovely life, and I enjoy what I do, and I'm given lots of opportunities. But so that's on the list. That's launching very soon, and that hopefully will help a lot of people. And also, I'm giving everything that I do. So it will also be performance tips and dealing with nerves and building confidence and nitty gritty as well, like phrasing and jazz improv and all that silly sort of stuff, but the stuff that I do better than other people, or like I have more experience in than other people. So
fantastic.
That's on the list.
And where can we see you perform other than just with the Blue Jays? But where else could we see you perform coming up as a solo jazz singer, other than hopefully Ronnie Scott's in a few months?
Surely. I've got one near me. I'll list it on my website. Surely I will.
Okay. Which
I think is in March, which is nice. That's actually what I normally do is when I go out with my trio is I do a sort of mix of piano-led stuff, which is the jazzier side of things, and then guitar-led stuff, which is more the rock and roll. So it's like all the songs that have been important to me in my career. So it'll be that sort of thing. It'll be a mix of jazz and rock and roll. That's March the 7th, I think. Something like that.
March 7th.
Yeah.
That's your next show.
That's the next one. Next solo one.
In London, yes?
No, it's near me, actually. I like to stay local,
Okay, great.
It's in, and it will help, it's in a church, so it helps to raise funds for them as well. Nice. In a church near me in a lovely village called Watlington.
You get some nice reverb in the church, reverberation.
Oh, yes.
Very nice.
Be careful, but let the church do the work, Yeah, that'd be nice.
Chris, thank you very much for coming on this podcast with me.
Thank you.
Where can people follow you finally? Where can they find you online?
I'm on all of the major social media platforms. I haven't done a TikTok in a long time, so maybe don't get too excited about that. But on Instagram, I'm at Chris L. Weeks, or it's all on my website, which is chrisweeks.co.uk.
We'll put them all up on the screen as well. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. All the best to you.
Thank you very much.